of a prehistoric sun, a vibrant orange-red sphere began to stretch across the vast, pristine ocean. It was an age before civilization, 60 million years ago.
Inside a small cave nestled near a towering, rugged cliff, a young woman named Mura stirred from her deep slumber.
Her senses, honed by years of solitary survival, immediately registered the change from the dark, quiet. Mura pushed aside the woven mat of large jungle leaves that served as her door and stepped out onto the rocky ledge. She was a figure of lean strength and agility, clothed in simple, rugged hides. She stood at the mouth of her small sanctuary, gazing at the sun as it climbed over the shimmering expanse of the sea. The silence was profound, broken only by the gentle rhythm of the waves crashing against the shore below.
After a moment of absorbing the dawn's majesty, Mura began her morning ritual.
She made her way down the short, winding path to the edge of the water.
The sea was cool and clear, a refreshing balm. She cupped her hands, splashing the water over her
Once
face
refreshed,
and body.
she retrieved a tiny, shivering bundle from a crevice near the cave. A young
Mura
white
had
rabbit.
sheltered and fed it. Now, with the sun up, she carried the little creature into the fringe of the nearby
She gently
forest.
set the kit down near a thicket, watching until the little rabbit, guided by instinct, quickly scampered away.
Mura felt a brief pang of connection and release. She knew the wilderness took and gave life in equal measure.
Mura then returned to the shore, her mind focused on the day's journey.
She grasped the spear that was her constant companion and primary tool, a formidable weapon.
With the bone
expert
spear in hand, Mura began to walk along the sweeping coastline. As she walked, as she began a ritual, she began the born of end isolation. Hello? Is anyone there? The ancient word. She called again and again, the hope of being another human, a family, a tribe.
But as always, the
small
only response was the sound of the wind and the waves. She was, as far as she knew, utterly alone.
Undeterred, she continued her walk, her eyes scanning the ground for nourishment.
She paused to pluck and eat several handfuls of sweet, wild berries that grew on low bushes by the shore.
After walking for some distance, Mura's survival instincts instantly snapped to high alert.
Up ahead, where the water met the sand, she spotted a dark, swift-moving pack of wolves.
They were hunting, expertly cornering fish and other sea creatures that the tide had left stranded.
She immediately dropped into a crouch and sprinted to the nearest cover, a cluster of large, black boulders. She pressed herself flat against the cold, rough stone, her bone spear clutched tightly.
She stayed hidden, motionless, listening to the snarls and sounds of the wolves as they consumed their catch.
It felt like an eternity. Happen at the sea.
But finally, the sounds began to recede. The pack turned as one and disappeared into the dense, waited several more minutes, her muscles aching from the tension. She then eased herself out from
The danger was
behind the rock.
past, but the residue of fear lingered. She took a deep breath, reset her resolve, and resumed her journey.
Rippling. And this time, it was from the sea. A sudden, powerful disturbance erupted in the water.
Before Mura could even register the danger, a massive, thick tentacle shot out of the churning depths.
It was the limb of a colossal, gigantic squid, hauling her screaming into the cold, turbulent seawater.
The enormous squid began to constrict its grip, pulling her deeper. Mura felt its suckers adhere painfully to her skin.
She fought back with the desperate fury of a creature cornered.
The primitive bone spear, momentarily lost, was quickly found again in the murky water.
Focusing every ounce of her strength, Mura began to stab wildly and repeatedly at the thick, rubbery arm of the giant
She
squid.
drove the razor-sharp bone point into the tentacle again and again, aiming for the
The
soft
squid
spots.
recoiled instantly, its grip momentarily slackening as it registered the unexpected
Mura saw
pain.
her chance and continued the savage attack with a final, furious thrust.
She drove the spear deep into the monstrous arm.
It thrashed violently in the water, its huge body briefly visible, before it turned and plunged swiftly into the deep,
Mura,
dark
gasping
abyss.
for air and battered, pushed off the seabed and fought her way back to the surface.
She swam with frantic, desperate strokes toward the beach.
Collapsing onto the wet sand, coughing up water, her body shaking from the near-death experience. Collapsing onto the wet sand, coughing up water, her body shaking from the near-death experience.
Collapsing onto the wet sand, coughing up water, her body shaking from the near-death experience. Survival demanded immediate action. She scrambled to her feet, snatching up her spear.
And ran as fast as her exhausted legs could carry her, not stopping until she was deep within the relative safety of the den.
Once out of sight of the sea, Mura slowed her pace.
Her next objective was essential: to gather provisions for the night. She began to hunt for ground roots.
She hadn't searched long before her keen eyes spotted the telltale green vines of wild sweet
Kneeling
potatoes.
down, Mura used her animal bone spear not as a weapon, but as a rudimentary digging stick.
She worked diligently, prying up the rich, dark earth, unearthing several large, heavy sweet potato tubers. She carefully placed them into her ancient, rugged carry bag, a pouch made of thick, treated animal hide.
With her reserve of root vegetables secured, Mura headed back toward the coast.
Reaching
was
the
hungry.
water's edge, she waded into the shallows. Holding her bone spear ready, she moved slowly.
Her eyes scanning the clear water for the telltale flick of movement.
She was an expert fisherman, and with a swift, powerful lunge, she speared a silvery fish.
Then another. And another. Soon, she had secured a small but sufficient meal.
With her catch in hand and the pouch of sweet potatoes over her shoulder, Mura began the final leg of her journey.
As the sun began its long descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and deep purple, Mura reached her home.
She immediately set about preparing her dinner. She gathered dry wood and tinder. And, using a primitive friction method she had mastered long ago, managed to coax a small.
She cleaned the fish carefully, skewered them, and placed them over the crackling flames.
She then placed the sweet potatoes directly in the hot ashes, letting the fire slowly cook.
Mura sat by her fire, savoring the simple, delicious meal. The wariness and fear.
As the last light faded and the world settled into a deep, velvety darkness, Mura
Mura retreated into the safety of her small cave. She lay down, the